I'm Michael Friedberg. Well, I'm a CMO, and I'm a fractional CMO. Feels like some of admission. And I'm here to run the next panel, which is we've got some domain experts who are going to really help answer some questions and shed some light. I currently run a company called Swaytech, so we're a bunch of marketing professionals that are kind of on a mission to get Kiwi tech to be the #1 export in New Zealand, and we use that fractional model to help us get there. But today, I have 5 incredible fractional executives here to answer some questions. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to kick off some questions. Michelle.
Great. All right, well, everyone already knows who I am. I'm Michelle Alban. I'm a fractional CRO, which means that my domain expertise is all things revenue widely. That includes sales enablement, RevOps, pre-sales and post-sales. My time in my domain depends on when I start the clock, because actually even in undergraduate I was doing this, so I guess that's about 15 years. And my time as a fractional has actually been the last 3 years. My very first gig I called a consulting gig, but it actually was a fractional gig. And in the last only about 6 to 12 months have I changed my LinkedIn title to officially call myself fractional. So I'm a relatively recent fractional convert.
Thanks, Michelle. My name is Christelle Blanchette-Aissaoui. I'm the Fractional Chief Marketing Officer. I'm also the co-founder of a collective of fractional chief marketing officers called Proxy. We've been around for 5 years. Back then we were called VCMOs, and same, over the last 18 months we made the transition because the way we operate is really fractional. We work with tech and SaaS companies in New Zealand, and we help them kind of, thrive and build their marketing capability so they can go global. And we have a very wide range of expertise. We cover all areas of marketing between the 5 of us. We work from pre-seed to IPO companies, from no marketer to full teams of marketers, and we've got different sorts of engagements that have been proving really interesting for businesses and quite successful. And over the last 5 years, and I close up with that, we've worked with over 70 tech companies in New Zealand.
Hi everyone, I'm Vic Jack. I have been around the startup and tech scene for probably the last 20 years, but operating in a recruitment, talent acquisition and people space. I've only recently in the last probably 6 months started doing that on a fractional basis. Prior to that, I've actually been going into organisations as an external consultant, doing a lot of audits around their PPC, and I'm now basically a fractional RPO, so you can use me as a recruitment processing outsourcing, or you can also, I also operate as a fractional head of talent or fractional CPO inside the business, which is kind of quite new. I don't think people have really understood what that means just yet, but we'll dig into that a little bit later.
Hi everyone, Shona Grundy. I call myself a fractional chief operating officer, but essentially as a fractional commercial leader for your business. I've been in the startup scene and building new companies and businesses for about 25 years. I've moved across a couple of different industries. So the tech industry is the last 15 years. My specialty really is in capital raising, helping companies achieve product market fit and expansion offshore. I also do functional ways of working across teams so that they understand how strategy is achieved. And then I've been doing this only for the last year. I've been primarily in and out of different startups, and then I've moved into this fractional model about a year ago. Yeah.
My name is Malcolm Paul. I'm here as a fractional CTO. My domain experience is Chief Technology Officer, Program Management, and helping companies develop digital strategy. So the Program Management and the CTO helps implement that. In terms of domain expertise, I've been CTO since about 1990 was my first gig. I've been doing fractional work since about 2019. I wrote my first line of code about 1980.
Okay. That's brilliant. There's your team. Let's kick off with the first question. First sort of sets of questions. One of the things about being a fractional is you really need to build trust and credibility quite quickly within the organisation. So, Vic, When you've typically had, as a fractional, sort of 1 to 3 engagements at a time, as those are running, how do you build that trust and maintain that trust with your clients?
So like any engagement with any kind of contract or any kind of organisation taking on a client, you need to build in some structure around NDA, confidentiality, have ethical processes in place. Also, with the fractional model, trust is incredibly important, but it's different than, say, having a contractor come in place, all care and no responsibility. Fractionals are coming in and building trust because they are part of your team, and so it's different in that it's going to have more alignment around who you are and who your culture is, how you are in terms of your values. So establishing those kind of processes and systems early on when you first come into the business, and having those, and also evaluating actually some of the processes that you have for yourself. So constant evaluation, very good communication, making sure you've got good NDAs, confidentiality in there, but also in terms of actually, if with the trust, it's about conflict of interest and things like that too. It's like, most fractionals are working on maybe 1 or 2, but with 1 or 2 businesses at a time. So you have to negotiate those sorts of things as well, but having very strong guidelines and guardrails around that sort of thing is really important.
Yeah, that's brilliant, very true. Malcolm, you work in the tech space, so there's obviously a lot of intellectual property that's being passed through as a fractional. How do you manage that or protect, help clients understand and protect that IP?
Probably healthy paranoia. Firstly, be very open with your potential clients about the work you're doing, who you're working with, what you're working on, and to share the work you're doing. So I'm hyper aware of any sort of conflict. The other thing is I try and segment all my work into different tool sets. So web browser profiles are your friends. I have multiple identities, not personalities, identities. And just trying to keep things separate. So segment things off and working with various parts of IP, destroying the data when you're finished, and just being very aware that New Zealand's a very small town. You're only as good as your last gig, and if you muck it up, that's it. And that sort of paranoia of making sure you do the right thing, keeping data separate. Again, as Vic says, non-disclosures, but just being aware day in, day out of you're looking after IP that people have invested millions of dollars in. It's an asset you're entrusted with, so making sure that you just live by the policies either of the company they've set up or the ones you've been involved helping set up.
So as you sort of heard from both panels, I think as a fractional, we have to be able to earn the trust and keep the trust of the team, and sometimes that's about doing the right thing. So Christelle, can you give us an example of where, in your position, generating your own work, you've done the right thing for a client?
Yes, of course. So, for example, I might be working for, let's take a prop tech company who's working, whose target market might be Australia, and they're marketing to real estate agents. And there is another prop tech company who wants to engage with me. So I would do my due diligence and kind of check, who's the target audience, what are the markets they're operating, are there any conflict of interest there? If my assessment is, I don't think there is any, I would go and talk to my client and ask them, okay, this company approached me, this is, the remit of why, where I would work with them. Are you on board with me going and working with them? They can say yes or no. If they say no, then we totally respect it and we would refer them to another fractional company. And if they say yes, then, we make clear that same, like you, Malcolm, as we are embedded within the company, I've got an email address for each of the companies. I use the tech stack, etc. So there is no cross-pollination, and both of them get the benefit of, my industry knowledge. But the strategies and what we do for them would be different, and we will never discuss what's happening there. And I also guess, because we are in a position where we're a team, I might also pass that, other company to another one, so we can truly silo the two businesses and make sure that we protect everybody's IPs.
Nice. Okay, now we have some trust and some credibility amongst the fractionals. Now you've got your fraction up and running, we want to kind of share with you the value. Like how do you unleash and unlock that value inside your organization? So, Shona, I'm going to start with you. You've done, I think it's 10 startups in the last 2 or 3 years. What's been that value that they have received from you as a fractional?
Yeah, so I think you heard from the CEOs that part of what they wanted to achieve was that senior leadership. Can they hit the ground running? You know, it's kind of a risk because it's so new, this model, and so they're curious about it and will it work? So from my perspective, I was always like, I want to, one, figure out how quickly I can make that impact, but firstly, you know, what's the problem they're trying to solve? And so I'm looking at that from the very outset and then trying to, you know, because you don't want to go on and fix things that aren't broken, right? You want to find the problem and fix that. And then what I've realized about my journey is that my career used to be linear, and I'd move from one startup to the next startup, and I'd learn and grow from that role or those professionals around me, and I'd go, that's excellent, and I'm learning and growing. And now I'm in several companies at a time with not just their team, but then they've got their advisory boards, and so all of a sudden I'm getting this exponential growth. So now I'm walking into a company and they're going, this is my problem, and I can quickly go, well, I've got a briefcase of processes and ideas about how I can get through that problem really quickly. And it's just sometimes like, okay, I can immediately see you've got a 90-day sales cycle. Let's tighten that up. And we got it down to 8. You know, it was just like, I can find this, this, and this, and I can apply it because of my exponential growth. And I think that for me was the eye-opener. I was quite shocked at that and really proud of it too. So.
And often it's about getting rid of all the things that aren't important today and getting right down to the things that need to move the dial quickly. Okay, moving on to the next question. Michelle, CRO is quite a new title and a new fractional. We've heard a bit today from Roy talk about sort of that virtual fractional sales. Just talk to us a little bit about that role and why it's so well suited to fractional.
Yeah, so as you can hear by my accent, I'm an immigrant to New Zealand. I'm originally American. And in the US market, chief revenue officer is usually dictating, especially when you're looking at technology. It's this wide breadth of helping sales scale and be solution oriented. So when you think about sales itself and across various industries, it's just bringing revenue across the line, right? Whereas when you work in a company that inherently needs to scale because it's a SaaS solution, there needs to be other levers that you can pull besides just direct selling. There's often channel partnerships. There's sales enablement to be able to ensure that the teams understand and are activated to sell. There's RevOps, which is making sure that you're operating from a place of data and that you're consistently getting that right data and operational process in place. And then I often work alongside a chief customer officer who's looking at post-sale and retention and revenue protection. And my role as a chief revenue officer is really based on the scale of companies that I work with. So Shona, you heard you can be more of a jack of all trades in earlier stage companies or maybe mid-stage companies. My background is coming from global corporate companies, but I've also been able to apply these skills to companies at various levels when they're trying to think about how they can create a sales engine that as soon as they start getting that revenue in is actually going to scale from the beginning instead of getting there and then trying to figure out how to do it once you've reached that benchmark. So that's more or less what a fractional CRO is, and it's by nature perfect for fractional because oftentimes I'm not needed 5 days in a company. I just need to have a trusted relationship with a CEO or founder, be very clear on the outcomes that they need, and I can go in and essentially set up their organization, bring in someone to run the sales organization operationally, and then bow out and see successful companies thrive. And that is just absolutely what gets me out of bed every morning.
Nice. Malcolm, CTO, so obviously, a lot of talk about technology right at the moment with, managing risk and compliance is pretty important for boards, thinking about cybersecurity. As a fractional, how do you ensure that there's no issues and you manage that within the clients you work in?
You asking me to guarantee no risk? There are entire conferences on this subject. For going in as a CTO fractionally, it's working with the executive of the team, with the company, and working out where the gaps are for cybersecurity. Do you have policies in place? Do you have good discipline? Do you have reporting tools? do you have a risk register? Just good old-fashioned hygiene factors for that type of stuff. For technology adoption, it's about leading them through the what's an acceptable level of change for them. It can be a startup or it can be a more mature company. I've done some work where we've gone as a consultant, helped them develop a strategy, pointed out they needed to have someone lead the technology. That's led to me being a fractional CTO until they got someone in full time. But that was about identifying where technology can go with them, what's the risk in adopting that technology, working with the rest of the team around, is that acceptable to you? So pushing the boundaries till you find what that future state is like, assessing the risk, discussing it, making sure it's well maintained, and then showing how it can be done so it can be led on to them doing it day by day.
That's good. Something we all need to be aware of. I'm just going to start answering a few questions from Slido. So there's been quite a few questions about how do fractionals find work. So I'm going to start with Michelle, with Christelle. Do you want to just give some, I'm guessing these from the fractional curious people in the room who are looking, how do you find and get work? And then I'll ask one other of you to lean in on that question as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, I guess so. Like Michelle, as you can hear, I am not from here, but now I'm a Kiwi. But like the difference between, like working in France and working in New Zealand is in New Zealand, we all, connected to each other. And so network is truly important. And I guess over the last 12 years I've been here and over the last 5 years doing, fractional marketing, I've built like a very impressive network. I know a lot of people within government organization, within the communities, within the fractional community, etc. And all the CEOs we've worked with. So there is a big referral component to what we do. We also work a lot with the VCs and directors and investors. So your network is super important. We decided to build a brand rather than build a personal brand. So it's all about proxy, and proxy every year run a SaaS marketing capability survey, and we publish a report. It's coming out in a few weeks' time. So people know us for that. That provides a benchmark to the industry. We also run a lot of webinars and workshops, either with Kiwi SaaS or some of the VCs to educate the community about what we do and best practices, etc. And we just out there. We go to meetups and events, and we just go and share with people. And there is a big component in, my belief is that if you pay, good things always come back to you. So I'm always up for a coffee. I talk with a lot of people, with no commitment. I'm really, eager to go and help out people solving their problems. I went to SaaSter Annual in September, and I had conversation with plenty of SaaS CEOs who had different problems. And there may be or there may not be work coming out of it, but at least people know I'm here and they might recommend me to somebody else. And I think, that's what's important. And we all do it in different communities. So we've got the coverage.
So I think just to sum up, if you're an individual network, building your network, being present, being out there, probably connecting to the types of organizations and CEOs and founders and leaders that you want to be in front of. Does anyone else have anything that they want to add to someone who's sort of starting out and wants to build their network and be found as a fractional? No. Okay. Another question that's just come in. Can it be useful to set a fixed term on a fractional engagement, or does that fundamentally change the model to a consulting assignment?
That might vary by our domains, because I might answer different sales and operations.
Okay. So this is a new model. I'm part of a founding group of fractionals around the world. There's 350 of us, and we're on Slack because Slack's awesome. And that's actually how we have created our New Zealand group as well. We meet up once a month, but we're sharing our models, and really it's about product market fit. We talk about the companies we work with and how we're to help them achieve this. But as your own business, that's also what we're trying to do. It's like, what's going to work for this CEO, this founder? Is it just a month by month, and then that's how I'm currently working, and all I require is a month notice? Or I do know other models where they want more certainty. I've heard of a fractional only just recently signed, they signed a 3-year one, which kind of blew my mind. But yeah, I was like, isn't that a full-time job? Like, but they're still working fractionally. And I do know others who are doing 6 months. So they're going, this is my 6-month engagement and I'm going to achieve X, Y, and Z for you and I'm out. And that's okay too. So it's about actually figuring out the product market fit for those people that you want to work with. I think that's the key.
And I might just add that domain-wise in sales, I need to be around quarter to quarter. That's what I'm helping companies do, is look at fiscal year financial results. So I operate quarter to quarter, but with an understanding generally that I'm there for 1 or 2 fiscal years is kind of how we plan. So I operate entirely, my contracts are in parallel with their fiscal year.
Yeah. I'll just add up something to that, because that might be a different flavor of, you know, how you ladies operate. Is I start all engagement with a workshop, and that helps us build an action plan. And so the action plan kind of sets expectations around what the company will get from the fractional CMO. And the engagement is then open-ended. So it might take 6 months to deliver. It might take 18 months. There is 30-day notice. We can all terminate at the same time, but we also know what success looks like and at which point in time we'll make ourselves redundant to bring in somebody who will own the function. And I also think that's, you know, truly important for fractional curious to understand. Is like, you're not here forever. You're actually here to deliver great outcomes and make an impact on the business, leave them in a better place, and replace yourself in whatever form that looks like.
And sometimes having that hard conversation, saying, I don't think you need me right now, you need something else in your business. I think the beauty of fractional is we don't put ourselves, we're not there to build kingdoms, we're there to help the business, and therefore we make those decisions. Vic, I've got a question for you, popular question. For a scale-up stage company, what would be the key initial fractional hires to drive efficient, profitable growth? Now, I know that you're coming from a CPO perspective, but you must have seen inside those kind of companies. Where do you start? What does that look like?
So this is really interesting because I've worked with so many startups, and generally speaking, at the very beginning, everyone's very reactionary. Like they might have someone with some technical knowledge, and they might have someone with some business knowledge, and they get together and then they hire a whole bunch of people, and then they don't really have the right type of people inside the organization at the right time. So having fractionals come into the business means that you can actually be very strategic around how you do that. So right from the outset, you have to kind of set like a strategy, and often people don't. And so going into scale up, you need people at a different types of expertise at a different time, right? So having someone like in the people space, like myself, in early helps to sort of set the foundation of how that's going to look. Put the strategy in place, look at who you're going to need at what time, getting other people who are fractionals rather than burning through your runway, employing all of these full-time employees, or doing what a lot of people do, which is have maybe the 2 founders and maybe one other SLT person, but then getting a whole bunch of other people who are kind of interns, graduates, trying to kind of like, you know, maintain that, but they still need looking after. So I think it's really important to kind of like get that structure earlier on, making sure that you've got the right sort of strategy in place. Also around the cultural and value part, you know, that alignment, getting that sort of really earlier on in the piece is much better than just like coming in and doing it at a scale up point. You need to have those things done right at the very beginning.
Vision, values, and strategy alignment. Okay, I've got a question, a really interesting one actually. Interesting to see the split of male and female panelists between the exec and the fractional panel. How could working fractionally affect career progression? Who wants to?
I have a very strong opinion about this. So I think that the modern working model for leaders is broken, and everyone's afraid to say it. But there's a lot more women on this panel than you're used to seeing, and some of us have caregiving duties for maybe our parents or our children. And there's a reality that we also are domain experts in our field. So I'm just going to kind of call out the elephant in the room and say that there are actually huge opportunities, not just for women, but for men as well, who have phases of their life where they need to be present in things that aren't just work, but still need to and be able to be in their domain without having to take a step down or aside. And so I think that by nature of this, all of us are in this field for very different reasons. I personally have a 2-year-old, and working 5 days a week in this phase doesn't work for me, but working 3-4 days a week in my domain, absolutely perfect, and it's the sweet spot for me. So I think it's the future of work. I think that we shouldn't be working 80-hour weeks as leaders, and I think this is a better way.
I'll add just a little something to that. Like, I know many fractional, and actually I would say like a third of them are men. And the men I see coming to this space are either like women looking at, a better quality of life with their family and spend some time with the children. But also, we all have different passions, and why should be restrained to work? So, like in what I do, I carve out 3.5 full days for fractional work, and I've got a day where I can do something I'm passionate about. One of our co-founders is now selling and teaching kids how to sell. Like, it's about, fulfillment and being your own person and owning this. And because we work with all these companies, we compound knowledge and value and expertise, and I don't think it will hold us back if any of us want to go back in a full-time job.
Want to add to that? 'Cause I'm sort of out of time now.
No.
So I've come from a sort of corporate background, so worked with some big companies like Fonterra and Foodstuffs, and gone up the greasy pole, got to the sort of fairly top levels in those places. It's a different thing. Your career progression becomes your career. I like working in technology. I like working with startups. I like working with smart people who bring technology to do really cool things. And you can say your career stopped. You can say your life's sort of a lot more enriched by working with smart young people who challenge every single day. It's a different way of doing your work and living your life, I think.
I'll re-put up that slide that I had earlier that was up there very briefly, just because understanding these nuances between advisors, consultants, virtual leaders, and fractional leaders is really helpful, because if you're running a company, these are all different engagement models that you can use with a person. As you'll see, the biggest nuance between virtual and fractional, honestly, is just those 2 columns of the work setting and how operationally involved and integrated they are into the company. So oftentimes, virtual and fractional leaders, as you can see, they're brought in for the exact same purpose. They're senior level domain experts. What the difference is certain domains actually are often better for virtual than fractional. So for instance, worldwide, fractional CFOs are more likely to be found as virtual CFOs, because the capacity of needing to be in a business 3-4 days a week consistently may not make sense, right? Whereas in sales, a virtual sales leader versus a fractional sales leader, you can see there's a nuance there, right? And then also, fractionals match whatever the working model is of the company, because we are as close as you can get to a full-time employee. So if we need to come in the office, we come in the office. Whereas by nature of the word, a virtual leader is someone who works remotely, and that is absolutely a brilliant model. All 4 of these are excellent ways to engage someone who's a domain expert. The question is, what is the biggest advantage that you will have by operationally integrating someone into your company more? And oftentimes that's if you're choosing between a full-time hire or somebody that's not full-time. Fractional is just that heaviest engagement, kind of that biggest investment that you're making in somebody as far as the model goes. Thank you guys, everyone, for coming together in our community and making this dialogue happen.